I wasn't even allowed to sit at the main table during my cousin Madeline's bridal shower. That should have been my first clue. My name's Erin Callahan. I'm 26. I'm a licensed environmental engineer. And somehow, in my family, that makes me the disappointment. Madeline, the golden child, the perfect daughter my mom never had, was being celebrated like a damn queen. White lace, champagne tower, the whole thing. And me? I was tucked at a side table with my younger cousins and told to try not to make things political when I brought up what I actually do for a living. That's how it always was growing up in the Callahan family. Oil money, big hats, bigger egos, and zero tolerance for anything that didn't fit their mold. My mom, a steel-spined Southern belle, spent my entire childhood trying to shape me into Madeline. It didn't take. I was too opinionated, too curious, too not Madeline. I didn't join cotillion. I joined robotics. I didn't go into PR. I went into environmental science. That alone was seen as betrayal. You're tearing down the family name, my granddad once said after I got quoted in an article criticizing fracking. I was 22. The only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't broken for being different was my Aunt Sylvia. Technically, my mom's younger sister, but more like a fairy godmother who swapped pearls for solar panels. She ran a renewable energy company out in San Francisco and never married. That alone was scandal enough for the family. But to me, she was brilliant, warm, human. She funded my college, helped me get my first job, sent me articles and books and texts that said, "Keep going. They'll never get it, but I do." So when she flew in unexpectedly for Madeline's bridal shower, I was thrilled. I hadn't seen her in almost a year, but she didn't look like herself. Pale, slow-moving, hands trembling as she picked at her salad. I pulled her aside in the garden behind the venue, trying not to panic. She smiled weakly. "I've had some news," she said, voice low. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. My throat closed. What? I didn't want to tell anyone else yet. They'll make it about themselves. I needed to see you. We sat there for an hour on that iron bench, just holding hands while the party kept going inside. Then, just before she left, she squeezed my hand hard and whispered something that still makes my stomach knot when I remember it. "Don't trust them, Erin. I've made sure you'll be okay. If they don't ruin it first." I asked what she meant. She just kissed my cheek, climbed into her Uber, and waved goodbye like it was any other visit. 3 weeks later, she was gone. No extended hospital stay. No dramatic goodbye. Just a call from a lawyer saying she passed peacefully at home. I was wrecked. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't stomach the thought of sitting next to people who would post photos with her urn like she was a centerpiece while mocking everything she stood for. Then came the call that changed everything. It was from Sylvia's personal attorney, someone I'd never met. He said her estate was being executed separately from the family by her specific request. And I was named the primary beneficiary. Not just some jewelry or a letter. No, she left me full controlling interest in her company. $8 million in assets, accounts, property, all of it. I remember staring at the phone in silence. Not because I was excited, but because I knew what this would mean. The next day, I showed up to the family house to pay my respects. No one offered me a hug. No one said, "I'm sorry." Instead, my mom greeted me with a forced smile and said, "We were just talking about Sylvia's will. Apparently there's been a mistake." Madeline stood behind her, arms crossed, smirking. I hadn't even sat down yet when my uncle, Sylvia's own brother, said it outright. "Whatever she left you, it won't last. That company should have stayed in the family. You'll see soon enough." That's when I realized something chilling. They already knew. And they were already making moves. I wish I could tell you I walked away that day and never looked back. That I lawyered up and fought like hell from the start. But the truth is, I froze. I sat on that floral-patterned couch in my grandmother's parlor, surrounded by people who had never once treated me like family, while they calmly discussed how to undo my aunt's final wishes. Like she was a clerical error. Like her choice, me, was some kind of tragic oversight that needed correcting. She was on heavy medication those last few months, my mom said, swirling her wine glass. Not exactly the clearest head. I wouldn't be surprised if Erin convinced her to change the documents. Madeline chimed in. You two were always close. I felt my entire face go hot. Are you seriously accusing me of manipulating a dying woman? Mom didn't even flinch. We're saying you may have misunderstood what she really wanted. That's all? I laughed, but it came out shaky. You think I faked a will? You think I pressured her into giving me a company I never even asked for? My uncle leaned forward. Let's not get hysterical. We're just trying to protect what Sylvia built. For the real family. There it was. The quiet part. Said out loud. I stood up. She was my real family. And I walked out. 2 days later, I got an email from Sylvia's lawyer, Mr. Halberd. Short, clipped. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. There have been developments. I went straight to his office in downtown Austin. Big windows, serious desk, the kind of place that smelled like old money and dry clean suits. He looked uncomfortable as he handed me a thick manila envelope. This was dropped off anonymously yesterday, he said. I thought you should see it. Inside, photocopies of a new, amended, will dated just 2 weeks before Sylvia died. It left everything to Madeline. The signature? Sloppy, uneven, wrong. Where did this come from? I asked. He didn't answer directly. We've been notified by opposing counsel that they intend to challenge the original will. Opposing counsel. Like this was a merger or a zoning dispute. Not my life. Not the only person who had ever really loved me being rewritten out of her own story. I felt sick. Like, actually nauseous. I barely made it back to my car before I started shaking. That night, I got the call I was dreading. My mom. You've put us in a difficult position, Erin, she said, all passive-aggressive southern sweetness. Madeline's hurting. She never wanted any of this to be messy. If you'd just be reasonable. I hung up. The next day, I went to Sylvia's old office, the San Antonio branch of her company. I had the legal right to access the premises, but you wouldn't have known that by how the receptionist looked at me. Ms. Callahan, we were told you'd relinquished any claim. What? I blinked. By who? She hesitated, then said, Your sister. She's not my sister, I snapped. And I didn't relinquish anything. It got worse. My access badges didn't work. My name had been removed from internal systems. Emails were being sent to clients under the new acting executive, aka Madeline, who had never spent a single day working in clean energy. I called Mr. Halberd again. They've already moved in. How? He sighed. They filed an emergency motion claiming the new will supersedes the old one. A judge granted a temporary freeze while the documents are reviewed. Are you kidding me? I could barely keep my voice level. That signature was forged. Sylvia was barely able to speak 2 weeks before she died. I understand, Erin, but unless we prove that in court, they have every legal right to act under that assumption. In less than a week, I'd gone from inheriting a legacy to being locked out of it completely. They moved fast. Too fast. Emails I'd sent from my company account were deleted. The last voicemail I had from Sylvia vanished from my cloud backup. Even my phone number was leaked. Suddenly, I was getting harassing messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Some just said, gold digger. Others were worse. And then, Madeline posted a photo on her Instagram. Her sitting at Sylvia's desk. Caption, carrying on the family legacy. Girl boss energy. That's when I broke. I called the lawyer again, demanding a deeper look into the forged documents. I begged him to find anything that could tie them back to fraud. But it wasn't Mr. Halberd who gave me the break. It was the mailman. 3 days later, I came home to find a small, battered envelope wedged into the crack of my apartment door. No return address. Just my name in shaky block letters. Inside, there was a USB stick. No note. No explanation. Just a single file on it, labeled Sylvia Office Cam 0327.mova. I opened it. The video was grainy, time-stamped March 27th, exactly 2 weeks before Sylvia's death. And in it, clear as day, was my mother. Inside Sylvia's private office, going through her desk, photocopying a stack of papers, including, I realized with a sick jolt, the signature page of a legal document. The same one they'd claimed was the new will. My stomach dropped. They didn't just fake it. They stole it. The video changed everything. But it didn't fix anything. I watched it at least 10 times that night. Every grainy second of my mother sneaking into Sylvia's office, glancing over her shoulder like some bad soap opera villain. The camera caught her taking papers from a locked drawer, copying them, and slipping the originals back in. And that's what made me sick to my stomach. They didn't forge the will from scratch. They'd edited something real. Something Sylvia had probably drafted months earlier and rejected. They kept the signature page, swapped the content, and stitched it together like a Frankenstein document. And then they had the nerve to call me manipulative. I sent the file straight to Mr. Halberd and demanded a full forensic investigation. His reply came an hour later. I forwarded it to our litigation team. We'll need to subpoena the original documents. But here's the thing about my family. They don't play fair, but they play fast. The next morning, I woke up to 3 voicemails from my apartment complex. Someone had reported suspicious behavior tied to my unit. Noise complaints, possible subletting. Complete nonsense. But enough for management to slap a 3-day notice on my door. I knew exactly where that came from. I didn't even bother calling my mom. She wouldn't pick up anyway. And if she did, she'd act shocked and hurt and say something like, "Why would I waste my time getting involved in your little apartment drama?" So I packed a duffel bag, loaded my laptop and the hard drive with every backup I had left, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, just away. By nightfall, I landed on my friend Harper's couch in Austin. She's one of the few people who never bought into the Callahan charm. When I showed her the video, she didn't ask if it was fake. She didn't play devil's advocate. She said, "Burn them to the ground." But that's easier said than done. My aunt's company was now officially under temporary management, meaning Madeline. She was already making leadership posts on LinkedIn. Hell, she even did a podcast interview about preserving a family legacy in the face of grief. Grief. I wanted to put my fist through a wall. Halberd's office filed an injunction to freeze all asset transfers until the forgery could be examined. In response, Madeline's side doubled down. They filed for a temporary restraining order against me, claiming I'd tried to intimidate staff at the company and harass family members online, which was complete bull. But it didn't matter. Now I was the one under investigation. At the hearing, they showed screenshots of posts from a burner Twitter account supposedly run by me, ones I'd never seen before. Vague threats, accusations, and just enough plausible phrasing that the judge didn't immediately toss it out. I looked at Madeline across the courtroom. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. My mother, though? She smirked. That night, back at Harper's, I broke down for the first time in weeks. Not the quiet kind of crying where you can still pretend to be strong. I mean the loud, messy, gasping kind that leaves you curled up on the floor, wondering if maybe this is just who you are now. Harper sat beside me and didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "You can't beat them playing by their rules, so stop trying." That's when the shift happened. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth. I wanted the world to see it. Not just in court, but everywhere. So I started documenting everything. Not just the legal stuff, but the personal history, the favoritism, the exclusion, the manipulation. I laid it all out in a video diary. My voice, my face, my story. I didn't post it. Not yet. But just recording it made me feel like I had power again. And then came the twist. A week later, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail, assuming it was more harassment. But when I listened, my heart stopped. It was Peterson. If that name doesn't mean anything to you, that's fair. He was my Aunt Sylvia's driver and assistant for over 15 years. A quiet man, polite, never got involved in family drama. Until now. His message was short. Miss Callahan, I don't want to get involved, but I think you need to see something. Something your aunt left behind. They didn't find everything. He left an address, a storage facility in Bastrop, just outside Austin. I didn't even wait. I got in my car and drove straight there. It was a no-frills place. Rows of dusty units behind a chain-link fence. Peterson was waiting, hands in his pockets, eyes darting like he didn't want to be seen. He handed me a key. She kept this off the books, he said. Didn't want your uncle or your mom knowing about it. Told me to give it to you if things went south. Inside the unit, a small fireproof safe, a few boxes, old filing cabinets. I opened the safe first. Inside was a thick brown envelope. I ripped it open, and my hands started shaking before I even saw the whole thing. At the top was a stamped form. Revised Corporate Governance Addendum, Callahan Renewables. But the signature on it wasn't Sylvia's. It was my grandfather's. And the date? 2 years before he died. Before the strokes. Before the memory issues. It was a sealed agreement making Aaron Callahan the legal successor. Not Sylvia. Which meant Sylvia never owned the company outright. She was holding it. For me, I sat in that storage unit for over an hour, just staring at the document like it was a ghost come to life. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased like it had been folded and refolded 100 times. But the signature was unmistakable. Walter Callahan. My grandfather. The patriarch. The man everyone in our family worshipped like he was some kind of oil-soaked demigod. Turns out, he'd left more behind than just a reputation. 2 years before he died, while everyone thought his mind was slipping, he had quietly signed an agreement naming me as the legal successor to Callahan Renewables. Not Sylvia, not my mom, and definitely not Madeline. And here's the part that really made my stomach turn. The agreement had never been processed. There was a cover note handwritten by Sylvia. If they ever come for you, this is what ends it. I didn't tell you sooner because I needed them to underestimate you. Let them. They always do. I laughed out loud. One of those hollow, adrenaline-fueled laughs that come when you're 5 minutes away from either passing out or burning down a building. Because the truth was finally clear. Sylvia never meant for me to inherit as a pity prize. She knew. She'd known for years. And that's when I stopped surviving and started planning. The first thing I did was meet with Halberd's legal team. We scanned and secured the original document, then quietly began the process of validating it through corporate record archives. Meanwhile, I kept my head down publicly. Let Madeline do her little podcast tour. Let my mother fake tears at business luncheons and talk about how hard it was losing a sister and being sued by a daughter. Let them feel safe, because they had no idea the walls were closing in. With Harper's help, I contacted a few people from inside Callahan Renewables. Not executives, staff. The people who actually ran the day-to-day. Sylvia's old admin. A warehouse manager. A sustainability analyst I'd met once at a conference. I didn't ask for favors. I asked for facts. And what I found made my blood run cold. In just 6 weeks under Madeline's leadership, the company had canceled 3 nonprofit contracts Sylvia had signed, greenlit a partnership with a known fossil fuel firm, and, get this, restructured payroll to funnel executive bonuses before employee salaries. They were gutting Sylvia's legacy like vultures, and they were using her name to do it. I pulled every receipt, every memo, every whistleblower quote I could verify. I had it all ready to go. Then I dropped the bomb. I posted the video. It was 12 minutes long. No dramatic music, no fancy cuts. Just me. Sitting in front of a camera, calmly telling the truth. I told the world what Sylvia meant to me. what she meant to her company, what my mother and cousin were doing behind closed doors. And then, at the very end, I held up the document. The original succession plan, signed by Walter Callahan himself. I didn't accuse. I showed. I didn't rage. I revealed. And then I logged off. By the next morning, the video had over 800,000 views. By the next afternoon, it was on the front page of 2 major business news sites. By day 3, a protest had formed outside Callahan Renewables headquarters, led by former employees and environmental activists, holding signs that read, "She was the rightful heir. Sylvia's vision, not Madison's vanity." Yeah, they even got Madeline's name wrong on some of the signs. Poetic. And just when I thought things couldn't spiral faster, they did. Because one of the reporters covering the story, Jessica Cormack from the Capital Ledger, called me with something I never saw coming. She said, "I've got a source inside the Callahan Family Trust. He says there's another will, a private one. And your grandfather didn't just name you as corporate successor. He left you something else." I froze. "What?" I whispered. "What else?" Jessica hesitated. "His shares." I blinked. "His shares of what?" She said it so calmly, like she was telling me the weather. "Callahan Petroleum, 42% voting control. The rest was split between your mother, your uncle, and Madeline, but he signed them over to you 6 months before his death. They've kept it buried, because if you file for probate now, everything changes." Everything. Callahan Petroleum was the crown jewel, the engine of the entire family fortune. They used to joke it was our family church, and now I knew why they'd worked so hard to bury me. Why my mother turned cold the day I left for college. Why Madeline always smiled with her teeth, not her eyes. Because they'd known all along. I wasn't just a threat. I was the empire. I thought the truth would be the finish line. I was wrong. It was the starting gun. Once word got out about my grandfather's hidden will, the one naming me as controlling shareholder of Callahan Petroleum, it wasn't just family drama anymore. It was corporate war. Halberd's team moved fast. We filed for emergency probate in Travis County, armed with the original succession agreement, the notarized documents from the storage unit, and supporting affidavits from both the family trust accountant and Sylvia's former legal advisor, who, as it turns out, had been pressured into silence by a very well-paid NDA. Within 48 hours, the judge ordered a full freeze on all asset transfers, business decisions, and executive movements at both Callahan Renewables and Callahan Petroleum. Madeline's Instagram disappeared. My mother went dark online. And my uncle? He suddenly remembered he had health issues and needed to step back temporarily from public affairs. Cowards, all of them. But here's the part that almost made me laugh out loud in court. When my mother's attorney tried to claim that I was not emotionally stable enough to take over such significant holdings. The judge stared him down and said, "She's the only one here who didn't commit perjury." Boom. We walked out of that courtroom with a preliminary ruling in our favor, and 2 weeks later, a final one. I was officially declared the rightful controlling shareholder of both companies. All forged documents were invalidated. Madeline, my mother, and my uncle were removed from all leadership positions effective immediately. But justice wasn't done yet. Because 3 days after that ruling, federal agents showed up at the Callahan family office with warrants. Turns out, falsifying corporate documents, forging succession papers, and siphoning charitable funds for executive bonuses isn't just scummy, it's criminal. The FBI had received an anonymous tip, accompanied by a flash drive of internal communications. Emails, wire transfers, meeting transcripts. I didn't send it. But I know who did. Peterson. Quiet, loyal Peterson, who saw everything and never said a word until it truly mattered. Madeline was arrested for wire fraud and obstruction. My uncle was slapped with charges of tax evasion and corporate theft. And my mother, was dragged into court for perjury and conspiracy to defraud a trust. When the headlines hit, it wasn't tragic family inheritance battle. It was Callahan heiress exposes years of family corruption. Fall from grace. Former energy dynasty under federal investigation. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But when I walked back into Sylvia's old office, now mine, I did sit in her chair, pour myself a scotch from the decanter she used to keep locked, and whisper, "We did it." Closure didn't come all at once. It came in fragments. Seeing the old staff return, reinstating ethical contracts Sylvia had championed, starting the cleanup. And maybe most important, it came when I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Me and Sylvia on the marina dock, back when I was 17. I was sunburned, holding a clipboard, and she had her hand on my shoulder like she knew. Like she always knew. On the back in her handwriting were 4 words. Don't let them win. I didn't. Looking back, here's what I've learned the hard way. The real test isn't whether people believe in you. It's whether you're willing to believe in yourself when no one else does. People will try to rewrite your story to fit their comfort. Write it anyway. If you've ever had to fight for something that should have been yours, your name, your truth, your peace, I hope you'll share it in the comments. You never know who might read it and feel less alone. And if this story resonated with you, I hope you'll stick around. Not because I'm some expert, but because I've been through the fire. And sometimes the people who've been burned the worst are the ones who'll never let you walk through it alone. Thanks for listening. Really.